specifically for the air temperature or that differential. You check that one time and then walk away. This temperature changed throughout the day. So, I've been involved with projects, particularly in the fall, where you may have to wait a couple hours, start the work. If cloud cover or something like that come over, it can change really quickly. So this isn't one of those things where you go, yep, you can start, and then you walk away. I want to be checking this periodically because the paint just won't perform. And then we'll be back repainting this thing. In my former role as North Region Engineer, I did a couple jobs with North Dakota, and their spec isn't quite as tight on the paint piece of it. And we ended up getting into a big lawsuit with a painter from somewhere down south. He ended up settling with us, but we had to go out and repaint the bridge 3 years after we painted it. The temperature was part of it because they came up in the fall. They're from the south, and they didn't realize what our temperatures were in the fall. So be cognizant of this, keep an eye on it, check it throughout the day. For the plans for 69-129, what type of assembly is specified for beam splices? Line, full, or detail assembly? We're looking for the structural steel notes, which I think are a sheet before the framing plan. This would be in the steel plans, not the concrete ones. So that plan set should be specifying line assembly. Now, I will say that this question is a bit misleading because do we use anything other than standard size holes in a field splice? I'm asking the question differently than how I previously said it in class. In the field splices themselves, do we ever use anything other than the standard size hole?
By the way you're asking that, I'm going to go no.
Correct. Standard size holes, splices are always drilled in place to match the shape. So it's a little bit of a trick question. The assembly type matters for a hole forming in what elements?
Splices?
Not the splices. Diaphragms and cross frames, right? The interconnecting elements. Oh, sorry, you mumbled well enough that I thought you had the right answer. You like my kids. Probably told me to F off for all I know. But, so the question, just to repeat back, if we designate line assembly or full assembly, what hole size are we really getting after for which elements? So the line or the full assembly is going to impact hole forming for what elements? The diagrams, there you go, right? So if it's full assembly, remember, we've got the girders made up, we've got the longitudinal splices made. We're going to set that whole system up. If there's cross slope, if there's curvature, we're going to set all the beams in place. We're going to swing the diaphragms in and we're going to drill from the blank. So that those diaphragms have to go back in that location because it's been drilled for that. If we have line assembly, we're going to make up our field splices and that's it. We're going to drill the holes for the diaphragms with a template and we're going to drill the holes in the stiffeners with a template and they'll never get checked until you go set it up in place. That's why we use oversized holes for line assembly. So the thing I like to think about it, line, right, is just a girder. No interaction when we're drilling, right? Full assembly is the full bridge. We drill it all together. I will say, not to overly confuse the subject, other states do this differently. MnDOT is, I'll say, one of the few that still requires this full assembly. where you're physically setting the bridge up in the yard and drilling in place. And it's because we've had so many problems with trying to get things to fit up, and we've even had our fabricators try to demonstrate on paper or on CAD using the CNC. And when you plug those tolerances in, it's nearly impossible to actually meet them all in the field, even with how precise CNC is. Other states allow them to go out there and ream to their heart's content to make it fit. So if you do work in other states and they don't require full assembly, you're going to be doing a lot of bolt hole reaming. Very, very common practice with New York DOT, and they're fine with it. We've just chosen not to do it. For the plans for 69-129, what's the maximum deflection due to the weight of the slab, barrier, railings, and utilities in span 2? Note that the deflection is going to be in feet, not inches. This is the 480-foot span, so this is a pretty good span. Digging in your steel plans. We didn't talk much about this sheet at all.
I think Mentimeter is relatively close to the test, or even remotely close.
I wish I could give you an honest answer. I've been taking the test in 7 years. So it's a good question for Paul tomorrow. You know, I've helped develop test questions, and when I write them, they're very similar to this. But I would ask Paul. So to help this one along, what sheet are folks looking at? If you've got the answer entered in already, what sheet of steel bridge plan are you looking at? Okay. You should have kind of a wavy line, right? This should look kind of similar to when we were talking about permanent bolting and diaphragms. So the table is going to give you total deflection in feet for the first line. The second line is going to give you deflection due to the weight of the structural steel. So that's its self-weight. The bottom line is going to give you deflection due to the weight of the slab, barrier, parapets, and the added elements. So we break that out, partially to help develop the stool elevations, partially to help the contractors plan their operations, right? So if you're digging through that, you're finding wherever the maximum one is. There's some negative numbers in here. What does that mean? Is this going to deflect upward? Previous page, not to completely confuse the matter, but remember how we talked about camber and how we want the beams, bottom of the beams to match the roadway profile? You can see we're building those deflections into this camber. This camber also shows, I think there's like a 2.5% grade across the ridge, which is why the whole thing's slanted.
Yeah.
Like, so this is for the fabric here. But it's kind of important for you folks, because really, once the bridge is erected, really once the deck is poured, it should kind of look like this. Maybe if you were to stand on one end of it, stand far enough away to have a true elevation view, it should look kind of like this. Maybe not quite so severe because we've taken the deadbolt out of it. So the answer, .4 feet. So I'd have to dig in here to see if that's right. That's in 2.5 feet. So, I think this is a matter of because we're asking for a specific one, all the concrete.
Right.
I want to think of it that way.
I entered it for with the background.
That's fair. Just want to make sure we understand what we're going after.
Yep.
Well, I want to say yes. Find out. That is it. Okay. Back here tomorrow, I believe, at 8 o'clock. If you have any questions, I can hang around a little longer. Otherwise, have a great night. Thanks for your attention
You don't really yours?
Huh?
Those are, you probably don't think that it's
Huh?
It's gotta be pretty big over. You text me and you respond to us like 4 days later.
Yeah.